From space, our planet looks calm. Blue oceans, green continents, and at the very top, white, pure, silent, unchanging, for millions of years. The Arctic has been Earth's crown of ice, a place that resisted borders, ignored ambition, and punished those who underestimated it. It froze ships, starved explorers, and humbled empires. For most of human history, the Arctic was not a prize, it was a warning. But today, that crown is melting, and as it melts, it is revealing something far older than oil or shipping lanes. It is revealing human instinct, the instinct to compete, to claim, to control, the same instinct that has driven conflict and conquest for thousands of years. Throughout history, whoever controlled the oceans shaped the world. The Spanish Empire, the British Empire, the American century, all rose on naval power. Yet for centuries, one ocean remained beyond reach, too cold, too distant, too unforgiving, the Arctic Ocean. Until now, because the Arctic is opening not just to explorers, but to ships, to armies, to corporations, to governments, and to a race that has already begun. A battle for the top of the world. In 1909, two men claimed to reach the North Pole, Robert Peary and Frederick Cook. Both American, both determined to plant their nation's flag at the top of the planet. For decades, the world debated who arrived first, but the real story was never about who won. It was about why nations cared at all. Because Arctic exploration was never only about discovery. It was about prestige, about proving that a nation could survive where others failed. The cost was brutal. In 1845, the Franklin expedition vanished. 129 men lost to the ice. In 1879, the Jeannette expedition was crushed by frozen seas. Most of the crew never returned. In 1913, the Karlik expedition failed. 11 lives gone. The Arctic killed them, and still, nations kept sending men because ambition rarely listens to warning signs. Today, the Arctic feels different. You can stand on Greenland's ice wearing modern gear, ordered online. You can arrive on a commercial flight. A century ago, this would have been unthinkable. The Arctic is still dangerous, but it is no longer impossible, and that changes everything. During World War II, the Arctic stopped being distant. It became strategic. Greenland turned into a military bridge between North America and Europe. Runways were carved into ice, bases built in isolation. By the Cold War, the Arctic became something else entirely, an early warning system. If bombers came, they would come over the pole. If missiles launched, they would pass above the ice. The Arctic was no longer empty, it was armed. Radar stations scanned the skies day and night. Submarines hid beneath frozen seas. Entire installations existed for one purpose: to detect the end of the world before it arrived. And then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. The Cold War ended, and almost overnight, the Arctic was abandoned, bases were closed, equipment left to rust, entire facilities sold back for almost nothing. The threat was gone, or so it seemed. For a brief moment, the Arctic went quiet again. But history does not end, it pauses. Long before empires, before borders, before militaries, people already lived here. The Inuit, for more than 4,000 years, they adapted to an environment that defeated outsiders. They learned to read ice, to understand wind, to survive darkness and cold. Their technology was precise, their knowledge refined. But more important than tools was culture. A culture built on cooperation. Because in the Arctic, one failed hunt could mean death, so food was shared. Knowledge was shared. Survival was shared. Today, that balance is breaking. Ice that once guided hunters is thinning. Patterns trusted for generations are disappearing. Knowledge passed down through story and experience is becoming unreliable. For Inuit communities, climate change is not abstract. It is personal. It is loss of safety, loss of tradition, loss of certainty. Scientists studying the Arctic are clear. The region is warming more than 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. White ice that reflected sunlight is vanishing. Dark ocean water absorbs heat. More heat melts more ice. Begins. Permafrost thaws, releasing carbon trapped for tens of thousands of years. This warming is not part of a natural cycle. It is driven by human activity, and it is accelerating. But here is the paradox. The same warming that threatens ecosystems, cultures, and global stability is also creating opportunity, new shipping routes, access to untapped resources, strategic advantages once locked beneath ice. And now, the world is paying attention. For most of the 20th century, the Arctic was a silent chessboard, watched, measured, armed, but rarely contested openly. That era is over, because as the ice retreats, power returns, and no nation has moved faster or more deliberately than Russia. Russia controls more Arctic coastline than any other country on Earth. More than 24,000 kilometers, nearly half of the entire Arctic perimeter. And beneath that frozen edge lies the foundation of its economy. Oil, natural gas minerals, rare metals. For Russia, the Arctic is not optional. It is essential. During the Soviet era, the Arctic was militarized heavily. Marines hid beneath ice. Bombers staged along the coast. Entire cities were built to extract resources from frozen ground. When the Soviet Union collapsed, much of that infrastructure was abandoned. Bases emptied, equipment rusted, cities shrank. But under Vladimir Putin, that retreat reversed. Quietly at first, then rapidly over the last decade. Russia has reopened and built new installations, airfields, missile systems, radar sites, advanced air defenses, electronic warfare units, not just to defend territory, but to project power. Russia does not see the Arctic as a remote frontier. It sees it as a shield. For centuries, Russia was invaded. From the west, Napoleon, Hitler. The Arctic represents depth, distance, early warning, a buffer against surprise. And today, that buffer is being reinforced. In 2007, Russia sent a submarine beneath the North Pole and planted a titanium flag on the ocean floor. Many dismissed it as theater, but symbols matter. That flag signaled intent, because under international law, nations can claim seabed territory if they prove geological connection. Russia claims the Lomonosov Ridge, an underwater mountain chain stretching from Siberia toward the pole. So do Canada and Denmark. But Russia is not waiting, because while legal arguments move slowly, infrastructure moves fast. Nowhere is that clearer than Russia's icebreaker fleet. Russia operates more icebreakers than the rest of the world combined, including nuclear-powered vessels capable of cutting through meters of solid ice. These ships do more than clear paths. They escort cargo, support military patrols, and guarantee presence. Icebreakers are the currency of Arctic power, and Russia is wealthy. That power underpins Russia's most ambitious Arctic project, the Northern Sea Route, a shipping corridor running along Sessia's Arctic coast, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, thousands of kilometers shorter than routes through the Suez Canal. As ice retreats, This route is becoming viable for more months each year. Cargo volumes are rising rapidly. Ports are expanding, navigation systems installed. Rescue infrastructure built. What was once icebound is becoming a highway, and every port built for commerce can support military vessels. Dual-use infrastructure is no accident. It is doctrine. Energy sits at the center of Russia's Arctic strategy. Many of Russia's older oil fields are declining. The future lies north, in Arctic reserves estimated at tens of billions of barrels of oil and gas. Massive liquefied, natural gas projects now operate well above the Arctic Circle, fueling exports, supporting state revenue, and reinforcing control. But sanctions and isolation have complicated this expansion. Much of the technology required comes from abroad, which forced Russia to look east, enter China. China has no Arctic coastline, but it has long-term strategy. In 1999, China's first icebreaker entered Arctic waters. Officially, it was scientific research. Unofficially, it was reconnaissance. While other nations debated whether the Arctic mattered, China collected data, built relationships, and waited. In 2018, China declared itself a near Arctic state, a creative definition, but a deliberate one. China argued that Arctic change affects its climate, its economy, and its security. Therefore, it deserved a role in Arctic governance. China's Arctic policy uses careful language: cooperation, science, sustainability. But beneath that language lies economic strategy. The Polar Silk Road, an Arctic extension of China's Belt and Road Initiative. The goal is simple: invest in infrastructure, gain access to resources, secure alternative trade routes, and build dependency. China does not need Arctic bases. It needs leverage, and leverage comes from capital. Across the Arctic, Chinese investment is growing. Energy projects, mining operations, shipping infrastructure, in some cases quiet, in others controversial. But the crown jewel of China's Arctic ambition is access to Russia's northern sea route. For China, this route offers something critical: an alternative to southern maritime choke points. Most Chinese trade passes through narrow straits, vulnerable to disruption. The Arctic route reduces distance and exposure, which makes it strategically attractive. Russia and China now find themselves aligned. Russia needs capital, technology buyers. China needs routes, resources, access. Sanctions push them together. But trust, strategically attractive, remains limited. Russia fears becoming a junior partner, a supplier of raw materials to Chinese industry. China sees opportunity, but also risk. Still, cooperation continues: joint exercises, energy agreements, shared shipping ventures. The Arctic becomes a space where rivalry and partnership exist at the same time. In 2020, 4 Chinese and Russian naval forces conducted joint exercises in Arctic waters, near Alaska. The signal was unmistakable: we are present, we are cooperating, and we are capable. For Washington, the message was received because for decades the United States assumed the Arctic would remain stable. That assumption is gone. For much of the post-Cold War era, the Arctic was governed by cooperation, 8 Arctic nations, working through the Arctic Council. Science first, security second. That balance shattered as global competition returned. America realized it had fallen behind. Its icebreaker fleet aged, its infrastructure lagged, its strategy fragmented. The United States operates only a handful of icebreakers, some older than the crews that sail them. New ships are planned. But building Arctic capability takes years, and rivals are not waiting. America still holds advantages: Alaska's strategic location, advanced air power, submarine capability. But Arctic power is not just military. It is presence, logistics, endurance, and those take time. Arctic policy remains divided. Economic development, environmental protection, indigenous rights, military readiness, all compete for priority. And without unified strategy, momentum slows. Meanwhile, the Arctic keeps changing, ice retreats routes, open stakes rise. For centuries, power was measured in territory, then in oceans. Now, it is measured in access, and nowhere is access changing faster than in the Arctic, because beneath the ice and above it lies infrastructure so critical that most people never see it. Modern power does not travel only by ship. It moves through cables, satellites, data, ALs, and the Arctic sits at the center of all three, beneath the Arctic Ocean. A web of fiber. Optic cables connects continents. They carry financial transactions, government communications, military data. Trillions of dollars move through them every day. These cables are thin, fragile, and largely unprotected. In warmer seas, they already face threats, fishing accidents. In the Arctic, those risks are magnified. Ice movement, seabed shifts, extreme depths, and now strategic interest, because cutting a cable does not fire a missile, but it can paralyze an economy. NATO understands this. So do its rivals. Submarines patrol Arctic waters not only to deter attack, but to listen, to map, to monitor. Cold water carries sound farther, which makes the Arctic one of the most sensitive acoustic environments on Earth. Whoever controls under. Ice movement controls awareness, and awareness is the foundation of modern warfare. During the Cold War, submarines hid beneath the ice to avoid detection. Today, they operate there for dominance. Advanced sonar, autonomous underwater vehicles, AI-driven mapping. The Arctic seabed is being surveyed in detail, not for science alone, but for advantage. Above the ice, space plays an equally critical role. Satellites that provide navigation, weather forecasting, communications, all depend on polar orbits. Missiles fly over the Arctic. Aircraft cross it. GPS signals weaken at high latitudes. Whoever controls Arctic space coverage controls movement. This is why nations are investing heavily in Arctic. Specific satellite systems, better coverage, faster refresh rates, more resilience. The Arctic is no longer a blind spot. It is a priority. Shipping routes amplify the stakes. As ice retreats, three major corridors emerge: Russia's northern sea route, the Northwest Passage through Cannes, Ada, and a future transpolar route directly across the Arctic Ocean. Each offers shorter distances, lower fuel costs, and reduced reliance on traditional choke points. But with opportunity comes friction. Canada considers the Northwest Passage internal waters. The United States and others disagree. They see it as an international strait. This legal disagreement has existed for decades. But melting ice, ease, transforms theory into reality. More ships mean more disputes, and more disputes mean pressure. Environmental risk rises alongside traffic. Oil spills in Arctic waters are uniquely catastrophic. Cold slows clean up, dark winters limit response. Remote distances delay help. One accident could devastate ecosystems, EMs for generations, and yet economic incentives grow stronger. The Arctic holds vast resources: oil, natural gas, rare earth minerals, nickel, cobalt, lithium, materials essential to modern technology, electric vehicles, wind turbines, advanced electronics. As global demand rises, so does interest in Arctic extraction, but mining and Ling carry enormous costs. Infrastructure must be built on thawing ground. Transport requires icebreakers. Cleanup is uncertain, and indigenous lands are often closest to deposits. This places Arctic communities at the center of global competition. Decisions made in boardrooms thousands of kilometers away directly affect villages on melting coastlines. For many indigenous leaders, this is not development, it is displacement. They are asked to choose between economic opportunity and cultural survival, between short-term income and long-term identity. International cooperation once offered a buffer. The Arctic Council provided a forum for dialogue and science, but geopolitics have strained it. Russia's invasion of Ukraine fractured trust. Meetings stalled, coordination weakened. Security concerns overshadowed collaboration, the very institution designed to prevent conflict. Now struggles to function. NATO has responded. Military exercises increased. Joint patrols expanded. New Arctic strategies released. Finland and Sweden joined the alliance, transforming the region's balance. Suddenly, Russia faces NATO along much of its Arctic frontier, which raises tension and accelerates preparation. The Arctic is no longer peripheral to global security. It is central. Energy flows, trade routes, digital infrastructure, military deterrence, climate stability, all intersect here. A disruption in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. It echoes outward through supply chains, through markets, through politics. What makes this moment dangerous is not inevitability, but speed. Change is happening faster than systems were designed to handle. Law lags behind reality, diplomacy lags behind deployment, and trust lags behind ambition. The Arctic is becoming a global choke point, not because it is narrow, but because so much now passes through it physically, digitally, strategically, and as pressure builds, the question is no longer whether the Arctic will shape the future. It already is. The question is whether that future will be managed or contested. The Arctic does not belong to any one nation. It belongs to the planet, and yet decisions made far from the ice are shaping its future faster than the ice itself can respond. For Arctic communities, the future is not abstract. It is measured in shorelines that retreat, in hunting routes that vanish, in winters that no longer arrive on time for elders. The Arctic is memory for children. It is uncertainty, a world they are expected to inherit. Without the knowledge that once made survival possible, indigenous leaders across the Arctic are asking the same question: who decides what development looks like? When the environment itself is changing, they are told extraction brings opportunity, jobs, revenue, your kasi, infrastructure. But opportunity comes with cost, and the people paying that cost are often those with the least power. Climate scientists warn that the Arctic is approaching thresholds, tipping points, moments after which change becomes irreversible. Permafrost, collapse, methane release. Free summers, each amplifies the next, not gradually. But suddenly the Arctic does not change in straight lines. It shifts. At the same time, global demand continues to rise for energy, for minerals, for faster trade. And the Arctic sits at the center of these competing pressures: protection versus profit, cooperation versus competition, short-term gain versus long-term stability. History offers a warning. When regions become valuable quickly, they are rarely managed carefully. Speed rewards power. Patience is sidelined, and voices closest to the land are often heard last. The Arctic Council was built to prevent this, to prioritize science, to protect indigenous voices, to separate cooperation from conflict. But trust is fragile, and geopolitical tension has weakened its influence. Without cooperation, The Arctic risks becoming another arena of rivalry, rather than a model for restraint. The future of the Arctic will not be decided by ice alone. It will be decided by policy, by restraint, by whether nations see shared responsibility or only advantage. This is not a story with a clear ending, because the Arctic is still changing, still opening, still vulnerable. The choices made in the next decade will echo for centuries. The Arctic has always tested humanity. Once, it tested our ability to survive. Now, it tests our ability to cooperate, to balance ambition with responsibility, power with humility. History does not shout its lessons, it whispers them, and the Arctic is whispering now, warning us, inviting us, asking whether this time we will listen. When historians look back, they rarely focus on moments of noise. They look for moments of choice, points in time when a different path was still possible. The Arctic is one of those moments. For centuries, it was protected by distance, by cold, by ice. Human ambition reached for it and failed again and again, but technology removed the barrier and climate removed the lock. Now, nothing stands between the Arctic and the forces that have reshaped every other part of the planet. Power is already moving north. Ships are rerouting. Satellites are repositioning. Military doctrines are being rewritten. Economic models are being recalculated, all quietly, all deliberately. And yet, there is a contradiction at the heart of this race. The Arctic is becoming accessible because the planet is warming. But exploiting that access accelerates the warming. The more opportunity is extracted, the more instability is created. It is a cycle that rewards action and punishes restraint. For policymakers, the Arctic is often framed as a future problem. To communities, the future has already arrived. Erosion is happening now. Ice is thinning now. Traditions are being tested now. Every delay has a human cost. This is what makes the Arctic different. It is not just a strategic frontier, it is a moral one, because decisions made here will affect places far beyond the ice. Sea levels, her systems, food supply chains, global stability. The Arctic is not remote. It is connected to everything. History shows that regions of sudden value rarely benefit from patience. Speed becomes the priority. Power fills the vacuum, and rules are written after damage is done. The Arctic still has rules, still has time, but not much. There is another path, one where cooperation moves faster than competition, where science guides policy, where indigenous knowledge is treated as expertise, not folklore, where restraint is seen as strength, not weakness. This path does not promise profit at maximum speed, but it promises continuity, stability, a chance for the Arctic to remain more than a resource zone, to remain a place, with people, with memory, with meaning. The Arctic has always been a mirror. It reflects human behavior more clearly than most places. In the past, it reflected our limits. Today, it reflects our priorities, what we choose to value, what we choose to ignore, and what we choose to protect. This story is not finished. It is unfolding, with every treaty drafted, every ship launched, every drill approved, every voice listened to or dismissed. The Arctic will remember what we decide. Ice carries memory. So does history, and long after the headlines fade, the consequences will remain. Because the Arctic does not rush, it waits. And in that silence, it asks one final question, not about power, not about profit, but about responsibility. Long after strategies change, after treaties expire, after borders are redrawn, what remains is consequence. The Arctic will not remember who won debates. It will remember what was done. Ice records pressure, land records disturbance, communities record loss. For centuries, human history moved around the Arctic now. it moves through it. Every new route, every new base, every new extraction site leaves a trace, some visible, some not. There is a temptation to believe that the future will correct the present, that technology will adapt, that markets will adjust, that damage can be reversed. History suggests otherwise. Environmental systems do not negotiate. They respond, slowly at first, then all at once. The Arctic has already crossed thresholds we once thought distant. Summer ice retreats farther each year. Permafrost softens beneath infrastructure. Coastlines collapse into the sea. None of this waits for consensus. And yet, even now, the Arctic is not only a warning, it is a choice. A choice between short cycles and long thinking, between extraction and stewardship, between control and coexistence. Some nations speak of leadership, others of security, others of opportunity. But leadership in the Arctic will not be measured by flags or fleets. It will be measured by restraint, by whether decisions leave room for life. Not just profit, Indigenous knowledge offers a different framework, one that values continuity, balance, responsibility to future generations. Not as philosophy, but as survival logic. This knowledge was dismissed for centuries now. It may be essential. The Arctic does not need saving from nature. It needs protection from my patience, from haste, from forgetting that power without responsibility always leaves a scar. History has given humanity many frontiers. Most were exhausted, most were degraded, most were regretted. The Arctic is one of the last that still stands partially intact. What happens here will define more than borders. It will define credibility, whether humanity can pause, can cooperate, can learn. The Arctic will continue to change. That is unavoidable. But the direction of that change is still being written. When future generations look back at this moment, they will not ask what we knew. They will ask what we chose to do with what we knew. Because in the end, the Arctic is not testing our strength. It is testing our judgment.